Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Just Another Day. I am your host, Jalal Sandy, and before we get started, just want to remind you all to subscribe to the podcast if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Leave a rating and review. I haven't gotten one of those in a while, and it would really help me out if you left your thoughts and gave me 5 stars. If you're listening on Spotify, you can follow and download. And if you're watching on YouTube or you didn't even know I had a YouTube channel, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find it at Just Another Day. You can also follow me on Twitter at the letter J Sandy 45 underscore. And the podcast Twitter page is at JAD underscore pod. All right. A lot to get into today. I'm gonna start off on a positive note. I'm gonna talk about the Nets and Bucks game last night, and then we'll get into all this injury news that came out this morning and this afternoon. But starting with the Nets and Bucks, so the final score was 114-108 Nets. Kevin Durant with a masterful performance. 49 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists. First player ever to record those numbers. It was truly a legendary performance. He shot nearly 70% from the field, over 40% from three, missed 3 free throws, and still shot over 80% from the line. Jeff Green chipped in with 27 off the bench. That was definitely unexpected. And James Harden played, and he had some key defensive plays down the stretch. But he wasn't great offensively. No one expected him to be, given that his hamstring injury really bothered him, and he really pushed himself to play. So I give James Harden all of my respect for even playing last night and playing over 40 minutes, I believe. So, but the real story here, regardless of KD and the Nets winning, going up 3-2, this is more about the Bucks' shortcomings. The Bucks had a perfect opportunity to go back home up 3-2, and it sort of looked like that in the first half. They were up 16 or 17 going into halftime. Everything looked like it was going their way. They were hitting threes, forcing turnovers. It was so lopsided that I almost turned the game off in the second quarter, but I say, you know what? The Nets are capable of making runs, and they can definitely get back in this game. And that's exactly what happened. Jeff Green and Landry Shamet started hitting shots, and then KD went off. It was ridiculous. But on the Bucks side of things, especially, offensively and defensively. On offense, down the stretch, I don't know how many times the Bucks have to have Giannis running something at the top of the key to realize that that's just bad offense. When he's at the top of the key with the ball, it is extremely predictable what's about to happen. Especially when he does that little wind up, like where he backs up and then runs forward full speed. You know exactly what's about to happen when he's backing up. And I saw that the Bucks in their last 17 possessions ran 11 isolation plays. When that wasn't working the entire series, it wasn't working all game. But all of a sudden, now that I don't know what it is about the Bucks down the stretch in tight games, but they just seems like if Chris Middleton isn't hitting tough shots, they can't close. Giannis can't hit free throws. The defense will gladly foul him, put him on the free throw line, because he'll probably split the free throws. Drew Holiday sort of disappeared down the stretch, and Chris Middleton just wasn't good yesterday. So, offensively, there's nothing more. I feel like everything has been said already. Like, using Giannis off ball more, using him in the pick and roll, using him dribble handoff so that he has better angles at attacking the basket, and he can kick out to shooters if need be, instead of running halfback dive up the middle every time he gets the ball. And defensively was even worse somehow. So down the stretch, and Giannis is probably going to catch heat for this, which he should, partially. But this is also the coach's game plan. Giannis was not guarding KD in the last 5 minutes. He was playing help defense on the wings, on the shooters. But there is no help to be played when the shooters aren't doing anything. Like, you're just standing there. Especially if KD is as hot as he is and he knows that Giannis is on the weak side, he's not going to even go over there. So it's like, why not just put Giannis? Like, obviously, Giannis has been getting cooked by KD earlier in the series. But at this point, you rather Pat Connaughton guard Kevin Durant than Giannis? This was the Bucks' opportunity to win this series. This series felt like whoever won Game 5 would win this series. And it still feels like that. Kyrie is not playing in Game 6. And I don't know how good Harden is going to look. So I think this series might still go 7, but a Game 7 in Brooklyn is not good news for the Bucks. Mike Budenholzer, he's halfway out the door. Like, if they lose this series, he's gone. If they don't win a championship, he's gone. It doesn't matter that they have such a talented team and they've had playoff success, all this nonsense. If they don't win a championship, he's getting fired. You have too much talent to continue to fail in the playoffs like this. I don't know what more you can do to improve this team. I thought that this team had hit this core of Giannis and Middleton had hit its ceiling 2 years ago in 2019, but I think this is the best that they've been, and it's no excuse why they shouldn't have had more success so far. They should have won last night. They blew a double-digit lead in the third quarter, and it's not looking good for them. But I still think Nets in 7. That seems like the most logical answer right now. It's just tough. Giannis down the stretch wasn't doing anything. He was drawing fouls, but that's what the defense wants. And Giannis down the stretch decided to take a post fadeaway with James Harden guarding him, who was playing on a bad hamstring. When he was attacking him all game, getting by him, Harden couldn't move laterally, but I think James Harden did that just to prove a point. If you remember a couple of years ago, Harden came out and said that he indirectly said that Giannis has no skill. He has no bag. He has no moves. And he was right. Like, Giannis doesn't have a go-to move. His go-to move is the widest Euro step you've ever seen in NBA history. It's a spin that usually turns into a charge. And that's the reason why he shouldn't have the ball at the top of the key. Because a lot of the times, especially in the playoffs, it results in turnovers, which sometimes gets him in foul trouble. So, yeah, the Bucks just have to be better. Coach Bud is out of there anyway. Mike Budenholzer, he's gone. And, Nets in 7. All right, moving on to the horrific news that we received this morning. I'll start with Chris Paul. I don't even know which one came out first, but I'll start with Chris Paul. Chris Paul entered health and safety protocols this morning. And he'll miss at least 10 days. He'll be out for at least 10 days. And he tested positive for COVID. It later came out that he tested positive for COVID, even though he received the vaccine. And he's fully vaccinated. So Yeah, Chris Paul is officially the most unlucky superstar in NBA history. He has the worst playoff luck I've ever seen. If it's not injuries, it's COVID, and it's like every year is something. But for the Suns, they have to hope that this Jazz Clippers series goes seven, just so that Chris Paul can go through the protocol and maybe at most miss 1 or 2 games. I think hopefully it's not something where Chris Paul misses a prolonged period of time where he's out for like 3 or 4 weeks, because we've seen what COVID can do to people. In the past, it gave Jason Tatum asthma. He developed asthma from COVID, so you never know how he'll react to it. Prayers up to Chris Paul. It's really tough. Chris Paul is the heart and soul of that team. He's the leader of that team, and he had a huge game 4 on Sunday. It seemed like he didn't miss, and it's crazy because he had like 36, and I think he didn't take a single 3-pointer. All of his points were free throws, layups, and mid-range jumpers, which is just wild. Because it's not like he can't shoot threes. He definitely can. So, but yeah, prayers to Chris Paul. Hoping for a speedy recovery, and hopefully he'll get back to himself by the time the Western Conference Finals come around. And finally, possibly the most devastating news of the day in terms of injuries. Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers fear that Kawhi Leonard may have torn his ACL, where it didn't even look like much happened. The defender like bumped into him and his knee buckled a little bit, and he kind of just walked it off for like the last 2 minutes of the game. So it didn't look like much. He said he was fine, and then this morning it came out that he had a knee sprain initially, and that he would be out indefinitely. He would miss tonight's game and then be out indefinitely. The NBA news throughout the day just progressively got worse, but we later found out that he could have possibly torn his ACL, which is not confirmed yet, but I'm assuming that it is true, because usually when teams assume that a player tore something, it's usually true. So prayers up to Kawhi Leonard. This is tough for him, because this is basically him missing the rest of this postseason and most of next season, if not all of it. So, and he's had knee issues in the past, so I'm not sure if this is the same knee that he had problems with before, or if it's a different knee, but I'm sure we'll find out later. It's just tough to watch the best players in the league get hurt. There's been so many injuries this postseason. With Kawhi Leonard and Chris Paul both being hurt, that makes 9 All-Stars out of all the All-Stars that were named this year. 9 of them have missed at least one game this postseason, or will miss at least one game this postseason once the Clippers play tonight and then the Suns play their next game. It's just frustrating as a fan. It's frustrating, I'm sure, as a player, and for coaches to have to continuously adjust their game plans when their best players are not in the lineup. So what does this mean for... I'll start with the Suns. I don't think they make the finals if Chris Paul doesn't come back in time. That's pretty obvious. They need him to win a championship. They need him to win more than 2 games in the series just to even push it to 7. And I don't know. I'm still a little shocked by the news. Like, I don't have much to say on what could happen, but just like a little look forward. It's tough because I don't know who's coming out of the other side of the bracket between the Clippers and Jazz. They're also both dealing with injuries, with Kawhi being out, Mike Conley being out. So it's Paul George versus Donovan Mitchell, and I really don't know who's gonna win that series. It's now a best out of three series, and two All Stars going at each other. Hopefully, Paul George can step up, because if he doesn't, Twitter is gonna tear him apart again. But if I had to choose, I would probably say Jazz in 7, because, well, one, they have home court advantage. Two, I'd assume Mike Conley. I feel like he would come back if there was a game 7, and I don't know. I just, at this point, I don't trust the Clippers to win this series. They've lost their quintessential leader, their best player, best defender, best scorer. Like, that's a big blow for them, and they won't be able to replace his production. So hopefully their Ty Lue can scheme up something that will allow them to stay in this series. Like, I really don't want them to get blown out, but it's not looking good for them. Looking ahead to tonight's games. Tonight, the Sixers and Hawks play their game 5 back in Philly. And game 4 was really interesting. The Sixers couldn't close. They couldn't buy a bucket. I don't know what Doc Rivers was doing. But Embiid was terrible. I think he was 4 for 20 or 4 for 21. Ben Simmons couldn't do anything down the stretch. Tobias Harris and Seth Curry played really well, and they just couldn't close. And Trae Young, even though he didn't shoot well, I think he still had a really great game. I think he had 25 and 18 or something like that, and he's the youngest player in NBA history to record 18 plus assists in a playoff game. So going into this game, this is tough, because I think Joel Embiid's knee is starting to wear him down a little bit. You could kind of see he was tired, he was sluggish, and I don't think that was because of stamina. I think his knee is really bothering him, and I don't know what type of production he's gonna give today. I think he might gut it out and give 30 and 12, 13. I'm gonna say the Sixers pull this one out. They have their crowd behind them, and I think that the Sixers will feed off the crowd's energy. I picked the Sixers to win this series in 6, and I think that's still very possible. So I think the Sixers win tonight by about 8 or 10, and Joel Embiid probably has a slow start, but then the crowd gets behind him, he picks it up, and they pull out this game. And the last game of the day, as I mentioned before, Clippers Jazz game 5, excuse me. Back in Utah, the Clippers will be without Kawhi Leonard. So, going back to Utah on the day that you found out that you're losing your best player, in an environment where Paul George doesn't play his best, I'm picking the Jazz. I expect Donovan Mitchell to have another great performance. I expect Jordan Clarkson to have a great game. Joe Ingles, Bogdanovich, I feel like all those guys are going to step up. And I don't know who from the Clippers is gonna step up. It's probably going to have to be Luke Kennard, or maybe Nick Batum. Marcus Morris and Reggie Jackson obviously are going to have increased roles. But I'm talking about guys with really limited roles that now have to step up in Kawhi's absence. I think you look at Luke Kennard, who's a shooter. Yes, they attack him on defense, but they need the offense now. So they have to play Kennard. They pay him all that money just for him to sit on the bench and play him limited minutes. I think the Jazz win this one pretty handily by about 15. And then they go back to LA, and we'll see what happens. I think LA could win that game, but it's going to be tough. It's just, injuries suck. Injuries are terrible. And this is the worst that I could remember in a long time. this whole season has been frustrating. We know that the NBA is at its best when its best players are playing, and a lot of its best players have been hurt this year. So it's just devastating as a fan of the game, as a fan of some of these players. It's tough to watch. So that will do it for today's episode. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to leave a rating and review. If you're listening on YouTube, like and comment what you thought about the episode. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at the letter J Sandy 45 _, and the podcast Twitter page is at JAD _ pod. Thank you all for listening. Oh, wait, hold on. There won't be an episode next week. I will be on vacation, so no episode next week. And then I'll return the following week to record again. So I will see you all in 2 weeks.